When a talk show host tried to humiliate Carrie Underwood on live TV, she turned the tables with one stunning line that left the world speechless. The atmosphere in the studio was electric, the kind of energy that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Carrie had agreed to appear on Live Tonight with Melanie Hayes, a talk show known for its bold political undertones and no-holds-barred interviews. The stage was set, the lights blazed, and the audience buzzed with anticipation. With Grammy wins, sold-out tours, and a decades-long career, Carrie was no stranger to tough questions, but this wasn't just another promotional interview. Melanie Hayes was infamous for her sharp tongue and viral gotcha moments, often walking the fine line between entertainment and provocation. Tonight, Carrie was in her crosshairs. From the moment she stepped on stage in a sleek navy pantsuit, radiating confidence, the tension in the room was palpable. Her blonde hair framed a calm yet determined expression as the audience erupted in cheers, but Melanie's calculating smile suggested she had a plan, one Carrie was about to walk right into. The interview started innocently enough, with questions about Carrie's new album, her tour, and life as a working mom. Carrie answered with her usual warmth, unaware that Melanie was preparing to strike. Her voice remained steady and genuine, but as the questions shifted toward broader topics, her faith, her views on social issues, it became clear that Melanie wasn't interested in playing it safe. "I've got to ask," Melanie said, leaning forward in her chair, "you've been pretty vocal about your personal values, especially on certain political topics. Do you think it's responsible for someone in your position to share such divisive views?" It was a loaded question, wrapped in a tone that felt more like judgment than curiosity, and the audience murmured, sensing the shift in the room. Carrie didn't flinch, but behind her composed exterior, you could see her mind working. This was just the opening move, and everyone knew Melanie was only getting started. Meeting Melanie's pointed question with a measured smile, Carrie let the weight of the words settle before responding. "I believe everyone has the right to their own opinion," she said, her voice calm but firm. "As an artist, my job is to share my truth, not to dictate what others should believe." A smattering of applause rippled through the audience, but Melanie wasn't ready to back down. She leaned back in her chair, her smile sharp and unyielding. "Fair enough," she replied, her tone carrying just enough of an edge to suggest she didn't fully agree. "But don't you think that as a public figure, your truth could have unintended consequences? Maybe even alienate some of your fans?" Carrie tilted her head slightly, not in dismissal, but with a quiet confidence that hinted she was ready for whatever came next. "I think my fans know who I am. They've supported me for years because they appreciate my honesty. I trust them to make their own decisions, just as I've made mine," Carrie said calmly. Melanie's eyes narrowed, her gaze almost predatory. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to push past casual debate and corner her guest. Leaning forward with feigned concern, she asked, "But what about when your truth doesn't align with progress? Don't you worry that sticking to your personal beliefs could make you seem, well, out of touch?" A quiet gasp rippled through the audience as the tension in the room heightened. Carrie's expression remained composed, but there was a subtle shift in her posture, a slight straightening of her spine, a sign that she was ready to push back. The cameras captured every detail, Melanie's smirk, the audience's eager anticipation, and Carrie's unwavering determination. "Out of touch?" Carrie repeated, as if testing the phrase. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Could you clarify?" It was a brilliant move. By asking for clarification, Carrie subtly flipped the dynamic, putting Melanie on the spot. The host hesitated for a split second before masking it with a dramatic shrug. "Well, let's just say not everyone agrees with the stances you've taken on certain issues. Some might even call them outdated." The room fell silent, the kind of thick, charged silence that made it impossible to look away. As Melanie prepared to press her advantage, Carrie's response was already forming, one that would shift the entire tone of the interview. Taking a deep breath, her hands resting calmly on her lap, she let the silence linger before speaking. "Outdated," she repeated, her voice filled with curiosity rather than defensiveness. "It's interesting that you use that word. To me, holding on to values like kindness, integrity, and faith isn't about being outdated, it's about staying grounded." The audience erupted into applause, a wave of support so strong that even Melanie seemed momentarily caught off guard. But Carrie wasn't finished. Leaning forward slightly, her calm demeanor now carrying a quiet intensity, she added, "You know, Melanie, it's easy to sit here and label someone's beliefs as outdated when they don't fit into a specific narrative. But aren't we all here to celebrate diversity? Not just in how we look, but in how we think." Melanie blinked, momentarily stunned by the grace and precision of Carrie's words. The host opened her mouth to respond, but Carrie kept going, her voice growing steadier with each word. "We live in a world where everyone is quick to shout over each other, to assume the worst instead of trying to understand. I think we've forgotten how to have real conversations, ones where we don't have to agree on everything but can still respect one another." The studio fell silent again, but this time, it wasn't out of discomfort. It was the kind of silence that follows a profound truth, the kind that makes people stop and think. Even Melanie, known for her sharp comebacks, seemed momentarily at a loss for words, her carefully crafted composure slipping just enough to be noticeable. Sensing the shift, Carrie leaned back with a small smile. "Look, I don't expect everyone to see the world the way I do. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to share my story, my music, and yes, my values. If that resonates with people, great. If not, that's okay too. But one thing I'll never do is apologize for being who I am." The audience erupted into thunderous applause, some even rising to their feet in a show of support. Melanie, clearly rattled but trying to maintain control, forced a smile. "Well, you certainly know how to make your point," she said, her voice laced with a hint of forced humor. Carrie smiled politely, but her eyes remained steady and unwavering. "I think it's important to stand firm when you believe in something," she replied simply. But the real impact of Carrie's words wasn't just in how they silenced Melanie, it was in how they resonated far beyond the studio walls. As the applause finally settled, the energy in the room had shifted entirely. The once commanding host was no longer in control of the conversation, Carrie was. Melanie Hayes now seemed more cautious, her usual sharpness dulled by Carrie's poised responses. It was clear she hadn't anticipated such grace under pressure, and it left her scrambling to pivot. Adjusting her cue cards, visibly flustered, she attempted to steer the conversation back into safer territory. "Well, Carrie," she said with a forced smile, "your passion is undeniable, and I'm sure your fans appreciate that about you." Carrie nodded graciously. "I think passion is something we could all use a little more of, don't you think?" The subtle jab wasn't lost on the audience. Laughter rippled through the room, followed by another wave of applause. Melanie chuckled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes, and quickly moved to wrap up the segment. But the damage was already done. What was meant to be a moment of entrapment had turned into a powerful display of integrity and authenticity. Backstage, producers were already buzzing. Word of Carrie's clapback had spread across the production floor, clips of her response were being flagged as viral material, and social media coordinators were preparing to upload the moment online before the show even finished airing. Meanwhile, in the audience, a middle-aged man leaned over to his wife and whispered, "That was something else." "She really stood her ground," the man said, and his wife nodded, admiration clear in her eyes. "That's what we need more of, people who don't back down when it matters." Back in the green room, Carrie's team exchanged knowing glances, fully aware that this wasn't just another interview, it was a defining moment. One assistant turned to another and whispered, "This is going to explode online. Just wait." And they were right. As the segment ended and the credits rolled, viewers at home were already reaching for their phones. Within minutes, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were flooded with clips of Carrie's words, and hashtags like #CarrieUnderwoodClapback and #AuthenicityMatters began trending. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Fans praised her composure and grace, while others who hadn't previously followed her expressed newfound respect. Even some of Melanie's regular viewers chimed in, calling out the host for her aggressive tactics. "Carrie just schooled her," one comment read, accompanied by a gif of a standing ovation. But it wasn't just social media taking notice. By the next morning, major news outlets had picked up the story, with headlines like Carrie Underwood stands her ground in heated interview and country star delivers viral clapback. This was more than just a viral moment, it was a statement, one that had captured the attention of an entire nation. It had become more than just a viral moment, it was a cultural conversation about respect, authenticity, and standing firm in your beliefs. But as the world dissected the interview, Carrie reflected on it with her usual quiet resolve, knowing this was about more than trending hashtags or headlines. The next morning, she woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop. Friends, family, fans, even people she hadn't spoken to in years were sending messages of support. Social media was flooded with clips of the exchange, each one praising her poise and dignity. But Carrie wasn't looking for validation. For her, the real impact lay in the messages from everyday people who saw a piece of themselves in her. One message in particular stood out, from a young woman named Anna in Montana. "I watched your interview last night," it read. "I've always struggled to speak up for myself, but seeing you stand your ground inspired me. Thank you for reminding me that it's okay to have a voice." Carrie smiled, deeply moved. Moments like this made the spotlight worthwhile, not the fame, not the headlines, but the connection, the ability to make a difference, even in the smallest way. Meanwhile, the conversation was taking on a life of its own. On morning talk shows, pundits debated the ethics of Melanie's approach, with many calling her out for crossing the line. "There's a difference between tough journalism and an outright ambush," one commentator said on a national morning show. What Carrie did wasn't just a clapback, it was a masterclass in grace under fire. But it wasn't just the media weighing in. Ordinary people were sharing their own stories of feeling judged or underestimated, drawing parallels to Carrie's experience. Social media became a hub for these discussions, with hashtags like #GraceUnderFire and #RespectEachOther trending for days. Even Melanie Hayes wasn't immune to the backlash. Clips of her visibly stunned expression spread across the internet, often captioned with phrases like "when your plan backfires." Some of her own viewers began questioning her tactics, with a few even calling for her to issue a public apology. Carrie, however, stayed above the drama. When a reporter caught up with her outside a Nashville recording studio and asked for her thoughts on the viral moment, she simply smiled and said, "I'm just grateful people are talking about the importance of kindness and respect." Her humility only deepened the public's admiration, and articles soon emerged praising her as a role model. Fans rallied to defend her against critics, making it clear that this moment wasn't just about one interview, it had sparked something bigger. It was about more than just one interview, it was about the values people wanted to see reflected in public figures. While the world debated and discussed, Carrie focused on her next step, determined to use the momentum for something meaningful. A week after the interview, she sat on her back porch in Nashville, sipping tea as the sun dipped below the horizon. The chaos of the past few days had finally started to settle, but the impact of that moment on Live Tonight with Melanie Hayes still lingered. She had watched as the conversation expanded far beyond herself, from classroom discussions to workplace dialogues. People were talking about respect, authenticity, and the courage to stand firm in a world that often pressures us to conform. She hadn't planned for any of it, but she welcomed the change. Her manager had suggested capitalizing on the buzz with a follow-up interview with a friendlier host or even a short documentary about the power of speaking out. But Carrie wasn't interested in exploiting the moment. She wanted to do something that truly aligned with her values. A few days later, Carrie announced that she would be donating a portion of the proceeds from her upcoming tour to organizations focused on fostering respectful dialogue and empowering young people to express their beliefs without fear. Her announcement was met with overwhelming support, further solidifying her image as someone who didn't just talk about integrity but truly lived it. As she reflected on the whirlwind of events, Carrie felt a deep sense of peace. Sometimes, she thought aloud, we're put in uncomfortable situations to remind us of who we are and what we stand for. Her words echoed in her mind as she posted a final message on Instagram, a simple note to her fans, paired with a candid photo from her latest performance. Thank you all for your kindness and support. Remember, standing up for yourself doesn't mean tearing someone else down. It means showing the world who you are and letting that speak for itself. Stay true to you. The message quickly went viral, with thousands of fans sharing it alongside their own stories of finding the courage to stand up for themselves. Carrie's moment had transformed into a movement, one grounded in the belief that everyone deserves to be heard and respected. As she stepped onto the stage for her next concert, the roar of the crowd reminded her that sometimes the strongest voice is the one that speaks with grace and conviction. The lesson was clear: standing firm in your beliefs isn't just about winning an argument, it's about inspiring others to find their voice, too. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories that celebrate courage, authenticity, and the human spirit. Let us know in the comments, when was the time you stood your ground, and what did you learn from it?